Hello, my dear viewers, and welcome to a new episode. I know the episode title is leading you onto something, but it's not true. Don't worry. In the middle of the 18th century, and in a Persian night, three friends sat together, dreaming about their future. They were Nizam al-Mulk Tusi, Hassan I Saba, and Omar Khayyam. Omar Khayyam's name was used in a lot of brands, wine, cafeterias, and everything. Nizam al-Mulk dreamt of power. He wanted to be a prime minister, grand vizier, who controls everything. His name is Nizam al-Mulk, reign, so it makes sense. Hassan I Saba dreamt of being a leader, to order armies around with just a word, and to turn the world upside down with just a whisper. The third one, Omar Khayyam, didn't dream of power or leadership. His dreams were pretty simple. He said he wishes he never stops writing poetry. Like he dreamt of reading poetry in El Sawi Culture Wheel, or joining an event with Amr Hassan, or a poetry book in the book fair. They both laughed at him, and didn't know that many years later Kulthum herself would be singing his quatrains. At the end of their sitting, they made a pact, that whoever gets his way, helps the others. After years, Nizam al-Mulk becomes a minister, vizier, for Malik Shah I, the greatest sultan, ruler, of his time. Hassan and Omar pointed out that Nizam had gotten his way. What about us? They both felt like their friend left them behind, so they went to the castle to visit him. They asked him about their pact. He then turned to Khayyam and asked him what he wants. Khayyam asked for dinars that would spare him from work, to write poetry till he dies. Nizam al-Mulk pulled out a sachet of dinars, and gave it to him. Take it and write your poetry. And you, Hassan, how many sachets you want? Hassan said he doesn't want money, he's the leader, or doesn't Nizam remember? Nizam al-Mulk gave him a small city to be its leader and get it over with. He gave him two options, Shah-e-Ray or Hamadan. Hassan had higher ambition than both, and said he wants to work with Nizam, who asked where rhetorically. Hassan said in the court, wasn't their pact to help each other up? Nizam kept thinking, and after hesitation he agreed, and made him work in the court. One day, Malik Shah I asked Nizam al-Mulk to calculate all the country's finances. Nizam, like any worker, told him that it's a tough job, so it would take him 2 years to do it. Hassan, like any skilled local worker, barged into it and told the Sultan that he can do it in 40 days. Nizam was furious of his friend. Hassan said it was fine, man, I noticed you're old and great so I belittled you. After 40 days, Hassan gave the Sultan all the finances requested. The Sultan was impressed, and gave a side eye to Nizam, that he should do his job better. Nizam was even more furious. Hassan got worried, and thought it smelled fishy. It wasn't the smell of French fries, but was the smell of conspiracy. Hassan then took off and ran away to Egypt. Egypt, at that time, was under conflict of ruling power, between the caliph's sons, Nizar and al-Mustali. The father wanted Nizar to rule, while the vizier, Badr al-Jamali, wanted al-Musta'ili to rule. Since Hassan I Saba liked to make connections with caliphs and sultans, he was on Nizar's side. Badr al-Jamali didn't like this at all. He was known for his great power and authority. So he ordered for the imprisonment of Hassan in Damietta. Days later and he ordered he gets exiled from Egypt, after staying there for almost a year and a half. Hassan kept thinking of where to go. He decided to go back to Persia, and he did go back. Nizam al-Mulk found out, and didn't let it slide. He didn't forget the finances thing, that embarrassed him in front of Malik Shah. So he chased him. Hassan was mad at his old friend, his head was on fire. He started reaching out to his connections, and made a rebellion movement. Hassan's movement got bigger day by day, and so did his ambition as the followers increased. This was the biggest threat to the country's stability. The country started chasing Hassan to get rid of him. But they don't know who they're messing with. He went to the Dalam province up north, far from the Sultan and his disloyal friend. Men there were known for their courage, and their love of fighting. Hassan and his increasing men climbed up the highest mountain there, Alborz Mountain, and forced all castles there under submission. Whoever didn't submit, would get burnt. Hassan wanted one of the castles as a center of his empire, and in 1090, he found a castle called Aladdin, which means in its language, eagle's nest. It was an almost inaccessible castle, only through narrow steep paths and turns. According to some stories, Hassan managed to take it from its owner. He gave him 3,000 golden dinars for it. Castles' prices are through the roof, my friend. One of my friends was offered one, semi-furnished, for 2,000 sterling dinar. You know what? It was his castles in the sky. All of that was happening, while Omar Khayyam, whom we spoke of, wasn't sitting still. What was he doing? He was writing poetry. Let's forget about Khayyam, he probably had a book fair to catch. Let's talk about Nizam al-Mulk, who saw Hassan gathering around followers and owning villages and castles. The sultan who Hassan worked for didn't sit still, the government didn't sit still, they chased after Hassan. In 1092, Sultan Malik Shah attacked the Alamut castle, but Hassan and his men succeeded in fighting back the attack. Hassan was really mad about it, and thought that it was definitely orchestrated by his disloyal friend, Nizam. Hassan thought of it. Like any backstabbed friend, to kill Nizam. Oh, all the backstabbing. Indeed, Hassan met with his men one day, and asked them who would be willing to get rid of Nizam. They all raised hands. But there was this one man, called Abu Talib Irani. He had his hands on his chest, and Hassan chose him. But Hassan, he was the only one who didn't raise his hands. Why choose him when he was surprised about killing Nizam? Hassan was kind of strict, apparently. Anyway, days later, Abu Talib went to the city dressed as a Sufi, and stabbed Nizam al-Mulk with a knife. Nizam's men killed Abu Talib for sure. When the news made it to Hassan, he shouted that Abu Talib died for him, and that Abu Talib went to the heaven over there. Hassan then pointed to some place on the mountains. Some historians say Hassan actually built a place that looks like heaven on top of that mountain. Someone might ask me, how did he know what heaven looked like? Probably an improvisation. He built palaces of different shapes and sizes, and decorated them with gold ornaments. He filled their rooms with colorful paintings and luxurious furniture. He furnished from IKEA and Mustafa El Solab silk, silver, ruby, and pearls. It's said he made rivers of milk, honey, and water, and brought beautiful girls who can sing and dance, who wear the most lavish clothes. And, to hide the place, so that no one can see it, he built a great wall around it. He made it accessible through a tunnel only he knows. Hassan used to meet up with 12 of his best men every day. He used to order his guards to give them a plant that grew on the mountain. The plant, my friend, was hemp. Or as we know it, hash. Yeah, I know it, abo mead. How do you know it? Shame on you. Hassan ordered his guards to increase the dose a bit, and whoever overdoses is gone, but the ones who passed out, they took them to the place Hassan built, the heaven. When they wake up, they see rivers of honey, angelic girls, and all sorts of food. They believe they're in heaven. Hassan left them in the alleged heaven for 5 or 6 days, then gives them hash again, and they get high and sleep again, then they're taken out. Hassan meets up with them again, and tells them if they listen to him, they'll live there forever. Hassan wanted to lure his men, so they do whatever he says, even killing. As long as in return, they'll go to that heaven they saw when they're high. The idea grew inside the men's heads. Hassan then started a major series of assassinations done by his men, who were called Fidai, self-sacrificers. Hassan I Saba managed to form a state within the country, in Alamut Castle. The Western historians called them Al-Hashashin, Order of Assassins. Not just that, Hassan also managed to gain followers in Damascus and countries in Central Asia. Hassan assigned a delegate on each, one who would train the men on the assassinations. No one in the Islamic would step on Hassan I Saba and not get assassinated. It's also said that Badr al-Jamali's son, the great leader of the army, was killed by Hassan's arrangement. Many years passed like this. Hey, Hassan, won't you rule already? Will it all be assassinations? I like it like this with the assassinations. And you, government, when will you get rid of this? I can't defeat Hassan. What can I do? Anyway, some action here and there. Between both sides and life went on. No one did anything new. But Omar Khayyam wasn't silent, he was still writing poetry. Days passed by, and the Mongol arrived. Oh my God, Mongol? God have mercy. Mongol used to burn whatever comes in their way. The same as what Rushdie Abaza said in the movie, Oh Islam. Mongol went up Hassan's mountain, which to his bad luck, Alamut Castle was on part of the land that Hulagu Khan wanted, who was Monk Khan's brother, and both were grandchildren of Genghis Khan. When Hulagu knew about what Hassan's doing, he said, shame on you man. Even I didn't do that. Yes sure, assassinations and dancers, but a start-up heaven? Are you serious? I'm Hulagu, you know. The Mongols went up to the castle, and said to have surrounded it for 3 full years, but at the end they managed to get in and burn it. It's hell now. And Hassan I Saba was taken in and executed. And that was the end of the assassins. Actually, my friend, All what you just heard was the famous story about the assassins, who were also called the Alamites, after the Alamite castle. They were also called Nizaris, after Nizar ibn al-Mustansir, who Hassan took his side when he was in Egypt. Marco Polo also called them movement of atheists. The truth is, my friend, that this story is made up of a group of stories written by foreign historians. And when, many ages after these events, they're stories with an aspect of truth, and many aspects of fiction. We can't be sure 100% when the truth ends and fiction starts. But unfortunately, Arab historians and writers followed these stories, and among them, for example, is the late writer, Ahmed Khaled Tawfik, in his famous novella, Castle of Murderers, that was published in Fantasia book series. As a writer, he added some fiction to it, but didn't deviate from the story written by the European historian. And like many researchers said, the reason behind that was that most of the writings on this specific period was burnt by the Mongol. It is a very valid point, because the Mongol burnt the Grand Library of Baghdad, the intellectual center in Abbasid era, and they threw the books that survived the fire in Tigris River. But, my friend, how was this movement named the Assassins, when this name wasn't mentioned in many Eastern books? What about Western, Abo Mede? No, that's another direction on the map. As Bernard Lewis said, one of the Orientalist historians, in his book, The Assassins, a Radical Sect in Islam, Lewis said that the first appearance of the word assassins in history was in the Roman emperor's letters, Frederick Barbarossa, to the Levant and Egypt in 1175, where he used this word to describe a weird Islamic sect, led by a mysterious person whom he called the Mountain Sheikh, and his followers live with him in a greatly fortified castle, and that he's a god to them, and they did whatever he said. Marco Polo described them in more detail when he visited Persia in 1273. He said that this sheikh was called by his followers Al-Din, a name that was perhaps altered later for the legend of Aladdin. The West sniffs after legends like this, and our world is a world of 1001 nights, a fertile land for legends. We should plant legends and export. In 1332, Philip VI of France mentioned the assassins when he was planning a new crusade on the east, to retrieve the Holy Lands that Europeans lost in previous wars. And before that, a German bishop called Burchard Grell told Philip he's advising him to not fall in the forbidden and face the dangers of the East with ego. He told Philip that there's a group called the Assassins to be avoided, and he continued the advice saying that these assassins have thirst for blood. They kill innocent people for a return. They don't fear anything, because they'll go to the heaven on earth. They look like devils, and they disguise in their missions, and are always ready to kill themselves if they get caught, but they'll kill you too. In the last advice, he told Philip that he never saw them. Philip was thrown off that the bishop didn't see them. But the bishop heard of them. In 1697, Barthélemy de Bellot wrote his book, named The Oriental Library, which was the first book to connect the movement with its doctrine beliefs. He said that they're a religious group that belongs to the Ismailism, a subsect of Shia. This Ismaili subsect is named after Ismail ibn Jafar al-Sadiq, who died before his father and had a majestic funeral. After the father died, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, the sect went out and said that Ismail is still alive, and that the funeral was fake, to keep him away from the Abbasid, and that he's hiding and will reappear when the time comes. That's when Ismailism appeared. When Napoleon's campaign went for the East, the interest in the region's history increased. In 1809, Sylvestre de Sacy wrote his prominent study, that he read in front of the French Institute, and was all about the assassins. But he tried searching deeper about the root of the word in relation to the movement. He said that hashish is the dry grass that the cattle eats. And after a while it was used to refer to hemp, that is known for its drugging effect. And that this group was addicted to this hemp, and they did their assassinations under its influence. On another hand, Bernard Lewis saw that the stories on the assassins weren't accurate, because most of the Arab and Islamic sources, including the Ismaili writings themselves, that the movement belongs to, or even the Sunni writers and historians, didn't mention anything about assassins. What? He also said that the word assassin is a Syrian folk term, and most likely the name appeared after Hassan's movement. And what's said about the heavenly place, in Alamite Castle, was refuted by Dr. Muhammad Osman El-Khasht, in his book, Hashashin Movement. History and Creeds of the Most Dangerous Secret Sect in the Islamic World. What's with the long name, Dr. Khasht? The book says that after a geographical study of the castle, some facts were discovered. The castle was on a high rock from the rocks of Alborz Mountain. That's higher than sea level, and lies in the shortest and rockiest path between Caspian Sea and Zagros Mountains. That area had an extremely cold climate, and snowed more than 6 times a year. Here shows the invalidity of what the European historians said, that described the castle as heaven. What heaven that is that cold? And the rivers of milk and water, that's not heaven, that's smoothie heaven. And also, the roads are rocky. Besides other writings saying that the inhabitants used to isolate the animals in the southern areas, to protect them from the cold. That's not all, my friend. Many historical writings stated that one of the major assassinations that were attributed to Hassan I Saba's group, that is the assassination of Nizam al-Mulk, was orchestrated by Malik Shah himself. Really? Why would I lie? Am I Hassan Saba? A guy might ask me, hey Abo Mead, you mean that Hassan I Saba is an innocent and a good man? My friend, you're still naive and didn't learn anything from me. No, I did. No, you didn't, my friend. It's obvious from your question. Humans are too complex to be classified, and El-Daha won't exonerate a criminal or incriminate an innocent. All what it is, my friend, is that this movement rose when the Islamic Empire was divided between the Abbasid Caliphate suffering in the east, and the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt and the Arab Maghreb, that belongs to the Shia Ismailism, along with statelets in Al-Andalus, and a great Seljuk Empire that rules Persia. The Seljuk Empire rules Central Asia for 120 years, from 1037 to 1157. The Seljuk were of Turkish origins. At that time, our protagonist, Hassan I Saba, turned up. Abo Mead, you're retelling the story? I'll tell you what we assume is closer to the truth. Hassan was born in Qom in Persia. Other historians say he was born in Ray, then moved as a child to Qom, but was educated in Nayshabur. Hassan I Saba initially was a Twelver Shia, but in his youth he was influenced by a friend, who was Ismaili Shia. One day, Hassan got really sick, and prayed that if he got better, he would be Ismaili Shia. And this did happen, but other than his doctrine belief, he was truly a genius. This made him work in the royal court, at the same time Nizam al-Mulk was there. Because the story of their old friendship, and how they were 2 peas in a pod, with their pact, is all controversial. According to Al-Juwayni, in his book, History of the World Conqueror, which was one of the very few Eastern sources that talked about the assassins. In his book, my friend, he uses texts that he directly links them to Hassan, that he found in Persian texts, under the name, Sargazasht-i Sayyedna. It was like an autobiography. Juwayni said that it's almost agreed on that Hassan was born after 1038, while Nizam al-Mulk was born in 1020. Oh wow. When did they meet then? One was born after 1038 and the other 1020. There's a huge age difference. This means that their friendship as colleagues was somewhat inaccurate. Because Nizam al-Mulk is older than Hassan with around 18 years, and Juwayni said that Hassan had his education in Ray, while Nizam had it in Nayshabur. And, Hassan I Saba was Shia, while Nizam al-Mulk was Sunni. This increases the probability that their first meeting was really in Malik Shah's court. Hassan was working in finances because he was a genius, and Nizam was a vizier. It's possible that jealousy sparked between them, because of the country's finances issue, that most European historians agreed on. There was a difference between the famous European version, and the version in Juwayni's History of the World Conqueror, that Hassan was almost done with his mission, that before the task ends, Nizam al-Mulk double-crossed him, and sent out one of his men to mess his paper up. Sultan Malik Shah was angry with Hassan, and Nizam al-Mulk made use of it and kicked Hassan out. That's beside another accusation he was facing, that he took in heretics and outlaws in his house. Hey you're away from God? Come live with me. And you broke the law? A criminal? Welcome man, come here. You did both? Oh, you sleep next to me. I think, my friend, that this is the real accusation, which makes sense, as there was a political doctrine conflict between Hassan and Nizam. A man who is heretic and an outlaw in the eyes of Nizam is a good and believing man in the eyes of Hassan. Then Hassan escaped from Iran to Iraq and Syria, then to Beirut and Palestine, then arrived at Egypt. This was in the 30th of August 1078. Hassan was graciously welcomed in the Fatimid court, because he was an Ismaili Shia, heart to heart with the Fatimid, same doctrine and stuff. Hassan stayed in Egypt for 3 years, between Cairo and Alexandria. But he clashed with the military commander, Badr al-Jamali, because Hassan was on Nizar's side. Badr al-Jamali decided to ban him to North Africa. Why don't they all want you, Hassan? Not in the first version or the second version. Where's the version where you're a good man? Even the historians didn't like you. Anyway, luckily for Hassan I-Saba, the ship he was on sailing from Alexandria broke down and almost drowned. Hassan was going to die and was saved. Do they take him back to Egypt? No, but to Syria, then to Isfahan. He spent 9 years calling for Ismailism, and preaches the arrival of Nizar ibn al-Mustansir. This angered the Sunni Seljuk Empire of Malik Shah, that naturally didn't want another doctrine spreading around other than its own. But Hassan escaped to Alamut, and stayed there till he died. He lived there as a king for 35 years, his efforts were focused on 2 things: first, how to spread Ismailism, and second, how to protect the castle from the continuous siege of the country, where sometimes they cut them off food and water. This what made them eat from the hash in the ground, noticed. Hassan managed to attract Daws for the doctrine, and send them from the mountain to nearby cities to lure their people. Persia, my friend, was under the intellectual power of Hassan's Dawa, calling. The movement trained a lot of its men on killings and assassinations. Until Nizam and Malik Shah died one after the other, the death of 2 important men of Seljuk Empire is tough. It caused disturbance in the ruling and power. Just like Barcelona without Messi, the goal is empty. This was supposed to give Hassan the opportunity to attack and get it done. Go, Hassan, go. But Hassan himself was confused, because at that time, Egypt was also going through a rough patch, at the end of Caliph al-Mustansir era, that historians call al-Mustansiri plight. People used to eat each other, it was a great famine. Imagine, my friend, people are full but still eat each other. After these disturbances, al-Mustali becomes the ruler, by the help of Badr Jamali, and Nizar disappears. There's a rumor that Nizar had a young grandchild, who was smuggled from Egypt to Persia, and hid in Alamut. Does this mean that Hassan, the castle ruler, is the new Imam protector of the whole Fatimid? After years, the movement scored their biggest achievements, when Badr died, and his son, Shahanshah, was assassinated. It sounds like a Saudi comedy, like Tash Ma Tash. Honestly, many sources say that Hassan was behind the assassination of Shahanshah, Badr's son, but to be honest, most of the sources deny this allegation. Anyway, Hassan lived in his kingdom writing and strictly leading the movement. Some sources even say he killed both his children, because they deviated from his system. One of them was caught conspiring against one of the judges, and the other was caught playing the flute. I'm telling you to assassinate, and you're playing the flute? What a fool. Another version says that one of them was killed over a wine disagreement. Probably someone wanted to drink Omar Khayyam and another wanted wine. I only drink my brother's. One day, he got very sick, and died leaving behind a caliph for the movement. Bernard Lewis said that the movement lived on after Hassan's death for years. Many people took their turns in leading, some of them took it away from Islamic beliefs, and some made it closer to them. Or even a scientific movement, they wanted to make use of their sciences, like some people. Until Hulagu Khan, Genghis's son, came, who made it up till Alamut, and abolish it completely. Burn everything it had and destroy the movement. The Western historians then called it the Order of the Assassins, and now that name responds to the most controversial group in Islamic history. Abo Mead, isn't it maybe that Juwayni version is correct? Of course, my friend, it's even possible that I'm not real myself, so Juwayni's version is an absolute truth? No, but, my friend, we assume that it's the closest to truth. In sciences, history, and everything, we don't seek truth itself, we seek the closest to the truth. Truth is incredibly hard to reach, we even don't know if it exists or not. Logic says that Hassan did lead a political and religious revolution against Seljuks, and it was one of the main reasons why Seljuk Empire had fallen. Hassan deepened on assassinations and fidai, self-sacrificers. But the whole hash and low-budget heaven story is hard to believe, for a reason. The rarity of writings about the movement in Eastern history. And also because the European historian wanted to dazzle it with his own style, to affirm the ideology that religion is a drug, that as long as one is under the control of an ideology or religion, then one can do anything for it. Killing for the sake of heaven is a clear-cut method to devilize the East. This was one of the big goals that the European historians tried to prove. This makes you learn that the stories of the European historian aren't always accurate, neither written for a goodwill, but can actually have ideological and political motives behind them. One more thing, my friend, for you, that you act like Omar Khayyam. He let things set on fire and wrote poetry. Here, my friend, in this episode, we don't conclusively decide anything. We say what the sources say, which is true. We don't know, but we can say that there's a version closer to the logic. Whose logic? Ours, my friend. I hope that in this journey you discovered that history is never written by one man, but written by many men, and to be inclusive, men and women. Many people write history from different perspectives, different thinking, and religious ideologies. Everyone puts in his own style, and give us a history with his own flavor. History with the European flavor, history with the Ismaili flavor, everyone just spices it up. And we, my friend, search hoping that God would guide us, to reach not the truth but the closest to the truth. In your journey to find truth, my friend, you can find some in the old episodes, and some in the next episodes, and some in the sources. If you want to get truths all the time, you can subscribe. You may want to look at the sources, there's a big fight. Historians are beating each other up over there. Al-Juwayni is finishing on Marco Polo. Now my friend, do you want to know about the Big Bang? Here, I gave you big bangs. And lastly, our challenge: if this episode made it to 200k likes, I'll make an episode on Hash. Subtitled by Habiba Hazem.